Y'all stand surrounded behind them. Good morning. A year ago, on August the 4th of 2005, we had a press conference at National Action Network talking about the disparate impact of the Legionnaires disease had on citizens in Harlem, and that we wanted them to be treated as fairly and justly as other families, and that we wanted those that were responsible for not taking seriously the exposure to the disease at the work site. We consider this something very serious in our community, that people can go and work so they can earn and take care of their families. And they then end up with an illness that can cause, in this case, 41 claims, 5 wrongful deaths. And we see one side of town being discussed and not Harlem. So it is because of that that we are assembled today to say that we are calling on the process that has been filed by the attorneys against the Skanska general contractors and the city and state to respond and deal with the ongoing pain of these families. This legal team headed by the Attorney General of Black America, Ben Crump, represents 6 of the 9 clients. And most of these cases, all but one, were in Harlem. This was contracted in Harlem. They worked in Harlem. Many of their families live in Harlem. And we are not going to allow them to be forgotten as just, oh, this is something that happened. It happened, it needs to be dealt with. Those that were negligent or in any way guilty need to be able to be called into accountability. And National Action Network stands with these lawyers and these families. If they thought we were going away a year ago, today we'll let them know not only are we not going away, I'm reading about people in other areas that are receiving certain kind of attention, and Harlem is being ignored. We will not tolerate that, we will not be silent, and the loved ones that remain will carry the pain for the rest of their lives, as well as those that were harmed that did not necessarily expire, but still suffer. They will carry that. Our lives mean something. You cannot act as though the lives of people and the worth of people depends on what part of the town they live in. Geography does not have anything to do with biology. If Legionnaires' disease was bad in one part of town, it should be valued the same in every part of town. And that is what this is about. So to lay out the legal as well as strategic moving forward, I'm honored to bring again the Attorney General of Black America, Attorney Benjamin Crump.
Thank you so much, Reverend Al. And these families, myself and people all over America, we want to thank you for your leadership in times like these. And we applaud you for having us at the House of Justice. Because when people didn't have anywhere to turn in Harlem when they were being affected by this Legionnaires, it was Reverend Al Sharpton and National Action Network who open their doors and say, we will find solutions. We will make sure you get the help you need. And so here we are, a year to the day from when we had the first press conference at the House of Justice in the previous location. And I am honored to be here again with my great co-counsel, Attorney Jared Scotto, with Wykes and Luxembourg, and he has Attorney Alana Wonk, Attorney Avelino Garcia, and Felicia Unger, and we have Attorney Nabiha Shear from Crump Law Firm, and a whole team of investigators and paralegals who have been working night and day for a year to get to this point. And Attorney Scotto, after I finish presenting to you, is going to give you some details to how much work we have done to be able to connect all the dots and let people know, Reverend Al, what really happened to cause this tragic outbreak of Legionnaires' disease. And I love when my mentor, Reverend Al Sharpton, said last year that Harlem is the center of Black America. Historically has always been. That does not mean Harlem should be the center of a Legionnaires outbreak in the city of New York. And so we're here today telling people that Harlem should never get less than. It should get everything that everybody else gets. So today, we're here, as Reverend Al said, representing 41 new claims, including 5 deaths. Our firm represents 6 of the 7 people who died as a result of this Legionnaires outbreak, and we filed 3 new lawsuits today. The lawsuits that we have filed are against the defendants, the City of New York, New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, Skanska USA Building, Inc., the general contractor, New York City Economic Development Corporation, Nowco Company, LLC, KSW Mechanic, LLC, Kim Aqua Incorporated, and Rising Sun Construction, LLC. And I will tell you, Attorney Scotto and I, we will talk a little bit about it and answer your questions, why we sued these defendants, because it is very important that if people are pointing the fingers, that we make sure the right people are held accountable to these beautiful citizens of Harlem. It matters. It matters. And Reverend Sharpton, we are here with these families. We had 9 families, now 10 families have joined us who suffered from the Legionnaires outbreak last year. Nucio Quanto, who was the first person to come forward who had been diagnosed with the Legionnaires, and he was a worker working on the Harlem Hospital and the New York Public Health Lab. And as a result, he'll tell you in his own words, he was forced to retire after he got the Legionnaires, and it still affects him to this day. We have Mimosa Israel, whose nephew died as a result of Legionnaires. We have Lakeisha Plowden, the fiance of Bruce Scott, whose daughter Brooke is also here. He died as a result of the Legionnaires, and Ms. Plowden can tell you it's only a mother who has to answer questions of her daughter why this day is so important in getting accountability for the death of her soulmate. We have Gloria Cooley, who is here with her daughter, June, and both of them were diagnosed, and Miss Gloria stayed almost a month hospitalized, and we are just thankful to God, Reverend Al, that she's still here because we were not so sure this time last year whether she's going to survive. So God left you here for a reason, Miss Gloria, and we're so happy that you are here. Dolores Everett was also diagnosed and spent significant amount of time at Mount Sinai Hospital. Nakia Bryant is here for her godmother, Rachel Toll, who died as a result of the Legionnaires bacteria. And then Mary Sewer is here. Everton D'Souza is present. Anthony Stokes is also here, who stayed significant time in the hospital. And Miss Rosa Hart is also here, and some of her family members. And so before Attorney Scott will come and address you, and we have 3 of the families who are going to address you. Nucio, who was the first, Miss Gloria and her daughter June, and the final family we will have address you is Miss Lakeisha Platten and her daughter Brooke, her 6-year-old little angel. I'm sure Bruce is looking down from heaven now. It was just a year ago that our clients were sickened by the Legionella bacteria from the cooling towers in the water system of Harlem Hospital and the New York City Public Health Lab. If you are not already aware, the Legionnaires' disease is a horrible, severe form of pneumonia that comes from breathing in tiny droplets of water that were contained with Legionella. In July 2025, New York City public officials identified the Central Harlem outbreak of the Legionnaires' disease. These entities that we are suing here today all had a responsibility to ensure that the cooling towers and water systems did not harbor Legionella bacteria, to properly maintain, inspect, and operate these towers and systems. And their failures and their negligence is the reasons our clients have suffered so greatly, many of whom died because of the failures of these defendants. Now, while we applaud Mayor Mondani's expeditious efforts to address and stop Legionnaires' outbreak in the Upper East Side just last month, as Reverend Al said, we urge Mayor Mondani and the city to properly resolve this matter with these families. These are people who were injured or killed as a result of this negligence, and the survivors and the families of the deceased deserve to have this matter resolved. We have many with us here today, and they ask the city and these companies to resolve these matters and, as a famous New Yorker said, do the right thing. That's what they're asking for them to do the right thing. An outbreak of this magnitude does not happen in a vacuum. Public health safeguards exist for a reason, and when they are not followed, families, workers, and entire communities bear the consequences. Accountability is essential, not only to provide justice for those who were harmed, but to ensure that a tragedy like this never happens in Harlem or anywhere else in New York in the future. And the last thing I will say, and I guess this was recently reported, Reverend Al, that the report came out, right, Attorney Scotto, and it said the genetic identity of the bacteria that was found in the cooling towers of the Harlem Hospital and the New York City Public Health Laboratory had the same genetic identified bacteria that were in some of our clients who died. That is very significant because those are facts. And so the dots have been connected. We don't want the city to delay this matter. We don't want anybody to ever sweep the lives of the citizens of Harlem under the rug. We want them to resolve these matters expeditiously. And at this time, you will hear from a young man, a great lawyer, who every day, him and these lawyers have been working on this. They're going to talk about the number of 5H hearings that they had with all 41 of the clients and how they have dotted every I and crossed every T, worked with all the experts nonstop, because we know that this Legionnaires outbreak didn't just happen, and we want to make sure that the people who were responsible will be held accountable. Attorney Jared Scotto from Wykes and Luxembourg.
Let me say before we bring on Brother Scotto, who I think can wrap it up very well because he's worked hard on this, I want to hear from the families because I want you to have the context when Attorney Scotto talks, the context of what we're saying from those that are the ones that are suffering from it. So let's start with.
Okay, we're going to start with Nucio, then we're going to go to Miss Gloria. Hey, you remember your...
I remember Nucio.
I find it disheartening that after I was diagnosed with Legionnaires, that my coworkers,
Say your name.
oh, sorry, Nunzio Quinto. Like I said, I find it disheartening that after I was diagnosed with Legionnaires, that my coworkers were not notified. And I found this out a few weeks afterwards. And evidently, neither were the people in the neighborhood that lived there. They were also in danger. And that's something to think about, isn't it? How people try to hide when they're doing something wrong, isn't it?
Thank you so much, Lucia. And now we have Miss June and Miss Gloria Cooley.
Hi, good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of my mom. And I just want to let you guys know is that we're still suffering from PTSD through this whole situation. My mom is still receiving medical treatment as follow-up to the damage that was done to her body. And I just want to share a short, brief story how we was received when I brought my mom to the hospital. I found my mom on the floor. I called an ambulance. The ambulance came. The day before I found my mom, I had knee surgery. I couldn't get in the ambulance because I couldn't bend my knee. So I took a cab to the emergency room. When I went there, they told me I couldn't go back and see my mom. They said, oh no, somebody has to come out and see you first. I waited almost 2 hours in pain, trying to see my mom. And I said, well, could you call somebody back there? Let them know I'm here. No, they're gonna have to come out and see you. Eventually, somebody did come out. When I went inside, they sure already seen the doctors. They were already telling her, well, you're gonna go home. And I'm looking at them and said, ma'am, my mom can't even walk. She was found on the floor without even moving. She was talking like she had emphysema or something. No. And they accepted that as if that was her normal and then questioned me about, well, when's the last time you saw her? And I'm like, ma'am, that's not her. She can't go home. I can't help because I can't even walk. And it just made it so like, what's going on here? Then I had to fight just for them to take the test for Legionnaire. They didn't want to do that. She was transferred from Harlem to Bellevue. Bellevue said, well, Harlem didn't do it. Bellevue said, well, they already gave her a medication, antibiotic, so she may not have it. And then they just kept pushing, I kept pushing back. If my mom didn't have me, she wouldn't even have known she had Legionnaire, because what they just flat out said was she has pneumonia, but we're going to treat it as if she has Legionnaires. That doesn't make sense to me. Why can't we know? And I don't think that would happen to another neighborhood. I don't think that treatment would happen to another neighborhood. I don't think so. And then she had to go to rehab because she still couldn't walk. All this time she in the hospital, she's still bedbound. And this is the person they wanted to send home. I'm like, what's going on? That's all I have to say.
Thank God you were there for your mother, Jill.
Thank you.
And then the final family we will hear from is the family of Bruce Scott, who was a young man who died as a result of the Legionnaires.
Good morning. My name is Lakeisha Plowden. I just want to say that it still bothers me and my daughter today. My daughter, she doesn't want to leave my sight unless she's in school. She doesn't want me to go anywhere out of her sight because the last time she seen her dad, he was leaving to go to the hospital in the ambulance, and he never came back after that. So for me, it's very hard because I have to deal with it, and you know, I'm a single mother now, so we don't have her best friend, and we don't have my soulmate anymore.
We're gonna fight for you, Lakeisha, and especially you, Brooke. We're gonna fight for you.
Attorney Scotto.
Thank you very much, Rev. I want to thank Reverend Al, and I want to thank all of the members and the staff here at NAN for welcoming us and allowing us to work so hard for this community. I want to thank my co-counsel and someone who's become a little bit of a mentor to me, Mr. Ben Crump. I want to thank everybody at my firm, especially the team that I'm working with, Alana Wolk, Avelino Garcia, Felicia Unger, and everybody else at W&L who supported us and all of our clients as we've worked so hard on this litigation since July of last year. Ben Crump Law and Whites in Luxembourg represent 52 people who were sickened and killed as a result of the 2025 Harlem Legionnaires outbreak. This morning, we filed 3 new lawsuits alleging the City of New York, Skanska, many of Skanska's subcontractors, and other named defendants were negligent in maintaining the cooling towers at Harlem Hospital and the New York City Public Health Laboratory located at 40 West 137th Street. In the year since we started working on these cases and working so closely with these families, we've learned a lot about what happened, and we've learned a lot about the things that should never have happened. Legionella bacteria is a naturally occurring bacteria. It's found in fresh water. Cooling towers, there were over 6,000 cooling towers in the city of New York, require fresh water in order to run. So they do take in fresh water. Now, there have been outbreaks in New York City in 2015, 2022, 2025, and here we are again in 2026, talking about a widespread diffuse outbreak just a few blocks south of where this outbreak happened last summer. So this is a foreseeable risk in densely populated urban areas. One of the experts we worked with told me and my team that you couldn't build a better machine to spread Legionella bacteria than a cooling tower. Wow. That's just the way they're designed. And when you see them on hot days like we get so frequently now in New York, with those big plumes of white steam that come out of those cooling towers, Legionella bacteria can spread up to 5 miles. But that didn't need to go 5 miles here in Harlem. Those 2 cooling towers on the top of those 2 city-owned buildings, the Public Health Lab and Harlem Hospital, were less than 1/10 of a kilometer apart. The bacteria that was found in both of those towers was sequenced, and it matched the bacteria that was found in at least 8 of the 118 confirmed cases of Legionnaire's disease that happened in 2025. So those entities knew that this was a risk that could happen in New York. They knew that it was possible for that bacteria to spread and make people so sick and make people die. And this is becoming all too frequent uptown and in the Bronx, that people that live in these areas, we love New York City, we love being close to our neighbors, but that presents an inherent risk that companies and building owners need to take into account. And they didn't do that here. In March of this year, the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene released a final report on the 2025 Legionnaires outbreak. And that report cites, it says the outbreak took place between July 25th, 2025 and October 1st. The symptom onset ranged from July 13th to August 10th. 92 people were hospitalized and 7 died. And the most likely source of that outbreak was the 2 cooling towers that Reverend Al and Attorney Crump and I have spoken about today. So we filed these lawsuits today. We've satisfied all of the requirements to have our clients sit for 50H hearings with the City of New York under oath, where they testified about running errands in Harlem and going to grocery stores and waiting for the bus on Lenox Avenue and going to use the ATM machine at Harlem Hospital because it was the most convenient in the neighborhood. And just doing those normal things that citizens of New York City, citizens of Harlem do every day, they got sick and some of them died. And we said at our first press conference, and I say it again today, this was a foreseeable and avoidable risk that could not have happened absent the negligence of the city, New York City Health and Hospitals, and the companies that Attorney Crump mentioned. So thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Derek.
You mentioned in your opening that, in your opinion, you saw other areas receiving more attention than the Greater Harlem. Can you be more specific exactly who were you talking about and where these people live?
Well, I'm speaking about, I've read a lot about the East Side. I've read about other areas, and I've not seen the same attention and the same reaction to what goes on in Harlem, where you have these number of people that have been suffering, some dealing with death, and there has been no redress, and that is why we're moving forward lawsuits. I will be appealing to the mayor and others to pay attention. This happened under the last administration, but the attention is happening right now. We cannot have a disease that affects everybody and then segregate the attention that is given on the disease. The disease spread everywhere and was impactful in Harlem. The reaction and the attention must be just as equally impactful.
Just following up on what Jay asked, the current cluster that just wrapped up on the Upper East Side, 7 people also died and a similar number of hospitalizations. Just wondering if you think logically there may be negligence involved there as well.
I think that there may be negligence or there may be intention. I do not know. But I wanted to raise the issue publicly because when I saw that and knew we were coming upon a year, that's when I reached out to Attorney Crump and said, wait a minute, they cannot act as though we're not here. Harlem has been, as Scotto quoted me, so I'll quote myself, has been the central place of Black American culture. We cannot be the central place of this disease and then act like we're the invisible men that Ralph Ellison wrote about. We must make this fair and equitable for everybody. We don't begrudge the attention given to East Side because everybody suffered and we should deal with that. But don't leave us in the dark.
Thanks. What does accountability look like here?
I think the lawsuits outline that.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here as Rachel Two's goddaughter is shaking because she's like, my mother didn't have to die. She didn't have to die. I mean, this was so preventable. That's why you have the safety rules. And so the biggest thing is if you don't follow the safety rules, there are consequences. Where's Brooke at? I mean, how many times does Lakeisha have to talk to her about where her daddy is? I mean, there are consequences to not following the safety rules. So what do we want? We want accountability and we want justice. We want to say that the lives in Harlem are just as valuable as the lives anywhere else in
That's
New
right.
York. And that's what we're fighting for, to say that Harlem matters. Harlem matters.
And Skanska, the general contractor, the city and all, should be held accountable for how this happened, clearly with negligence, and then how we respond. And the response cannot be as negligent as the actual acts were themselves that caused this.
In case of the judge rule in your favor, what is the kind of reparations or consequences that you are looking for the defendants?
Yeah, you know, Rev, Attorney Nabiha Shir and Scholar, we were talking about this. You know, these 50H hearings where these people testify to doing the most mundane things, Rev. I mean, it could have been people working at the House of Justice. If they went by Harlem Hospital that day, they would have likely been infected, and who knows what long-term effects that pneumonia was going to have on your respiratory system. And so we want them to get the treatment they need. We want to make sure Nusio, he wasn't ready to retire from work. I mean, after he got Legionnaires, he never got back to where he was at, and so he was forced in retirement. This had real consequences on real people who lived in Harlem. And I get emotional a little bit because Reverend Al and the House of Justice, we've done so much there in Harlem, and we see how good the people are in Harlem, and they deserve to be treated with the same dignity and respect as anybody else. They should not be treated less than. They should never get less attention when they're suffering a tragedy than anybody else. And so that's what this lawsuit is about.
Is there a dollar figure attached to the final?
The full value of the loss of lives that were taken.
Anyone else?
Are you seeking any policy changes to prevent future outbreaks in these suits?
Yes, the Bihar. Jared?
I would say that the city council has been pretty proactive about policy changes. There were some changes to the local laws requiring the frequency of testing of cooling towers that were put into effect after the 2015 outbreak in the Bronx that took 16 lives. And there were some additional changes that were put in by the city council after the 2025 outbreak in Harlem. And it seems like, regardless of those particular codes weren't necessarily followed in this situation.
We'll take two more.
Hi. Earlier, you guys applauded Mamdani for the work that he's done right now, but you also urged him to pay more attention to these families. I'm wondering if you can elaborate more on what that would look like and what you would like to see from Mamdani.
Well, I think that what we're saying, though this happened under the last administration, that we want to direct Mayor Mamdani's attention here because we would hope, and from all that he's done in other areas, the sensitivity here, that he would see that he's demonstrated in other situations. So we're appealing to him, and I'm personally going to appeal to him to deal with these situations. I think what exacerbated this, where I reached out to Attorney Crump and Scotto and their team, is we were coming up on a year, and I'm seeing others being talked about like we're no longer in town, and we're not going to allow that to happen. I don't think the mayor will allow it, but I've been around a long time. I know how to get the mayor's attention.
And like Reverend Al's good friend Spike Lee said, we just want the city to do the right thing.
That's right. Yes, sir.
Yes. Can you speak to Skanska and the contractor's role in all this? Because isn't it the building owners who are ultimately responsible of taking care of these towers? And can you just speak to the sort of the tragic irony that these are city health facilities where
I think you hit it right on the head, that it is a tragic irony that they are city health facilities. I mean, look at how many people that are on stage with us here and how many other folks in Harlem got sick from those 2 cooling towers and then went and sought treatment at Harlem Hospital. And then you've heard about, like June said, the disparate treatment that her mom received at 2 city hospitals, one Harlem Hospital and the other Bellevue. I'm going to speak briefly to answer the first part of your question. The public health lab was an active construction site. It was still being built. It hadn't been opened, and there were workers all over the place. That's where Nunzio was when he got sick. He was working on the fire alarm system. And that Skanska was still in control of that site. And the general contractors that came in and the designers that designed that cooling tower, actually, there were some issues with that was cited in the city report as well, that it was an overly complex system. And that may have contributed to it. And that's a finding that was made by the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. So each one of these entities has a role, a definitive role, in the building, the maintenance, and the control of that cooling tower that was unregistered with the city, that didn't have the safety features installed. The safety features were not connected to the internet, so they didn't know that there were parts of that cooling tower on top of the public health lab that weren't working, that weren't letting bad water out and having clean water come in. The report is very thorough. It's consistent with our investigation. We're very happy that the city put it out. But I join in Reverend Allen and Attorney Crump's calls for the Mamdani administration to take a look at resolving these issues and seeing these families get the justice and the resolution that they deserve.
All right, thank you very much.
Mentor, always. You're the best now, lawyer.